Welcome to Next Steps, conversations to help you achieve your potential. I'm Stephen Bouchon, and I started this series of videos to try to help people bring some little tools, some thoughts, some exercises that people could go through to help them think about themselves, think about where they wanted to go, what was important to them, and what were some of the milestones or steps to get there in sort of a career planning or life planning framework. I introduced the framework in one video, a couple of videos ago, and then the last video I did, I talked about purpose. Purpose is that which we want to be intentional about accomplishing in our life, and sort of some of the drivers behind that. Today, what I wanted to talk about are values. And the reason I think values are important is when we think about bringing together our purpose, kind of where we want to get to, some of those drivers there, things that are important, the why of we're doing of what we do, and our values, sort of the how of doing it, we actually create a pretty good personal compass. And by compass, I mean sort of a tool that we can refer back to, remind ourselves of when we have decisions to make, when we want to go, we have an opportunity to go left or right. We can take a look at those and say, okay, in this decision, which of this decision is sort of on purpose and honors my values, and which might or might not, and which values are honored in a particular decision or in a particular career or life path. So that's the reason the values are important. And what I wanted to do is I want to talk about values and kind of demystify some things or sort of put them into context of the way I think about them. So talked about our compass. So I think one of the first things that I want to get across is when I talk about values, I'm not talking about morality. Okay, so for me, values, they don't equal morals. There's no judgment behind your values. It's not that your values are right or your values are wrong from the perspective that I'm coming at it. The values are actually things that are important to you. They're things that when you're doing them, you're energized. When you're in a state when things are going on around you and you're happy, or you're in that state of flow where things are going really easy, you're probably doing something that is honoring your values. So it's one of the things to keep in mind. And as we think about how to identify our values and document them, it's going to be an important element there. Values are related to your strengths. Often when you're respecting or honoring your values, you're coming across as being very strong in a specific area. And as we think about how you want to progress in your career, playing to your strengths, playing to actioning your values is far easier than trying to overcome weaknesses. And that's sort of been a big shift in a lot of findings that have come out of research, I say really in the past 20, 30 years, that really playing to your strengths, honoring your strengths, leveraging your strengths rather than trying to overcome the obstacles that may be your weaknesses is a much better way to progress. I'll talk about resonance and I'll talk about flow. There are times when you think about, everything was going right. Everything just seemed to be coming easily to you. You were just doing it. It's almost like it was automatic. Things were fantastic. That's what we call a state of flow. And when you're doing it, that's when, again, you're on purpose, you're honoring your values, your values are in motion, your strengths are there. That brings that state of resonant flow. So what I want to do is, I'll talk a little bit about some of my values. My values, one of the strongest values I have is about learning, continuous learning. It comes from curiosity. So that's something that I value. Adventure, I guess it's that excitement, it's that unknown, it's that discovery part of it. There's something in there. Achievement, the accomplishing something and getting it done is a value for me. curiosity, awe, or appreciation of beauty. For me personally, I do a lot of things outdoors. You know, when I'm in the mountains or I'm out on the ocean or I'm at the beach and I'm looking out and I'm just really, really appreciating what I see there. It just gives me this inner sense of feeling of maybe my own insignificance in the whole scheme of things, but also it's just something that it recharges me. So that's one of the values. Hope, very optimistic. You know, if you know me well, you know that I see the bright side of things. I see the opportunities that come out of a moment that may be difficult for something. I'll reflect on what's challenging, and then I'll look at how I can leverage that moment for something positive. And creating. I'm not the kind of person who's a good steady state, ongoing, managing, you know, I said managing day-to-day operations is okay as long as I'm leading them and people are doing the day-to-day work, and that I have an opportunity to think about the future. I have an opportunity to think about perspective. So those are the things that for me, you can even see when I'm speaking, you know, they get me excited, they get me jazzed. So those are things that I value. Those are things that I incorporate into my values. And when I think about a role for myself, an action I'm going to take, if it's going to hit some of those key things, I know that I'm much more likely to be happy about it and be fulfilled by the action. One thing to keep in mind, my values pushed to extremes can be really annoying to some people. People whose values may not align with those. And that's another thing we need to think about our strengths. When our strengths are pushed to extremes, sometimes they can become weaknesses. We'll talk about that in another conversation, maybe a conversation with somebody who's specialized in Clifton strengths or in VEA strengths. So how do you identify your values? So I'm going to go through, again, three ways of doing it. You know, when I talked about purpose, there were 3 ways of doing that as well. So one exercise, and you know, it's good, is to take 10 minutes, 15 max, and just write lists of words of things that are important to you, things that you like to do, things that make you happy, actions, activities, things that, you know, when you begin thinking of them, they get you jazzed. Okay, so write those out, and then put that list and say, okay, this is a list of things that when I do them, when I experience them, they make me happy. Another way of doing it is to think about what are those times that we felt amazing, that we felt in flow. I talked about it earlier. Everything just seemed to be working. Everything was just really great. We felt good. And then think about what was going on at that moment. Who were we with? What happened? What led to that feeling of fulfillment, of flow? What was important? Okay, what was being honored at that moment? And then also we think about those things that make us angry. So, you know, there's some things that I really hate it when somebody gives up before even trying. So for myself, it's like, why don't they give themselves that opportunity? You know, so things like that. Write down those things that might, you know, put you off, make you angry, or really just kind of get you riled up, and write those down. And then once you have, for example, that list, especially that last list, what is that violating? What is being violated that's making you angry? So then once you have this full list of those things that make you feel good, things that happened in a state of flow, things that might make you angry, take a look at them and see how you might be able to group those things together and sort of identify or circle, you know, 5 to 10 of the things that are there that really stand out. Could be a grouping of words. And then so what really stands out as being most important for you there, and then kind of understand why those are most important. And what we're doing by doing that is we're getting past the sort of the sort of superficial of what it was, and then we're getting to the thing about why it was important, and those are our true values. Okay? Now again, the reason we're doing this, the reason we're identifying our values is because if we're honoring our values, we're fulfilling ourselves, we're being optimistic, we're creating energy, positive energy for positive impact in ourselves, and it's going to allow us to go further, faster, and be happier with the path we're taking. So there's another approach, a second approach I'd like to talk about, And that's through a strengths assessment. I've done two. One is VEA. It's called Values in Action, VIA. Sorry, in English, Values in Action. And the other one is Clifton Strengths. So what these both do is they take you through a series of maybe 50 to 100 questions, situations that you might find yourself in, and you evaluate where you are on a scale of 1 to 5. And both of them are based on a compendium of research and experience across decades of work, pulling together thousands of cases, and they'll come up with the 5 top values or strengths that are coming out, and then where some of the other strengths, and there's a standardized catalog of strengths. And then if you look at those top 5, okay, and you look at those strengths and you dig in behind them, and each of the assessments provide this information, you can see what are some of the values that are embedded in those strengths. And this will help you, again, get some clarity around some of the things that might be values for you that you knew about, that you didn't know about, but at least will allow you to articulate it to yourself and thus become more aware of what's going on with your values. So the third way that I want to talk about, and this works for a lot of things, it's called journaling. And basically what you do is you just keep track of what happened in a day. What happened that was really good in a day, made you resonate, you demonstrated strengths you're really proud of, you felt really good about. And then there may be some things that really ticked you off, they put you off, or they made you feel down. What were those things? And if you're focusing on the values, so journaling on those two types of things, you can do it for a week, you can do it for a couple of weeks, and sort of get an idea of, again, what are those things that are important to you? What are those things that fulfill you? What are those things that when you're doing them or honoring them, or they're present, you feel strong, you feel in a state of flow? So that's the third way. So we talked about creating the list, talked about assessments, strengths assessments, and then journaling as the three ways of going about identifying. Then, once you have your values, and I want to take you back to think about your purpose as well. So once you've identified your purpose, and once you've identified your values, you can bring them together and really think about, that vision for yourself. Okay, in the first video we talked about, what do you want to do, 15 years from now, 5 years from now? So at some time in the future, okay, what does that vision that you pulled together for yourself? How is that honoring? How is that in support of your purpose, and how is it honoring your values? Okay, then make some tweaks to it, and then you can start working on the milestones to come back. And what's really interesting is, why are you coming up with the milestones? So again, for me, I was in my mid-30s, and I thought about, in my 60s, sort of end of employed career, if you will. What did that look like? What would I be doing at those different stages? You can take your purpose, you can take your values, and use it as your compass. Say, okay, I see how achieving this milestone takes me towards my purpose. I see how achieving this next milestone, these next experiences I want to have, takes me towards my purpose, honors my values. And then you can begin experimenting just in your day-to-day life. Say, okay, purpose, values, keep them, write them down on a piece of paper, keep them on your wall, so that they're present, so you remind yourself of what they are. And then, especially as big questions come up, big decisions come up, you can look at them and say, okay, is that aligned with my purpose? Sort of the why of what I want to do. Is it aligned with my values? Sort of the how I want to be and what I want to honor in it. And then you can say, okay, if it does, if those two are aligned, you're probably going in the right direction. If you're not aligned, you're probably going to find out really quickly if you go in that direction. There's something wrong. There's something off. There's some what we'll call dissonance in the experience for you. And so what we'll do is we'll provide you an opportunity to make better decisions that are more likely to fulfill you, leverage your strengths, honor your value, and be on purpose. I know I just threw a lot of like crazy words at you right there, but it's a way of making sure that as you're thinking about your life and going forward, think about the impact you want to have, you're doing so from a place of honesty to yourself. So that's why I wanted to talk about values. I think we're going to talk about strengths next. I'm going to talk to somebody I know who's a professional in the area of working with strengths and helping people understand their strengths. See if we can put something together, maybe a conversation, short conversation between he and myself. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I've had a couple of people reach out to talk to me. We've had half-hour conversation to sort of make things a little more concrete from the videos. Feel free to reach out. Feel free to reach out with comments, either here at LinkedIn or at the YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube videos. I'm going to keep putting these up. I'm going to try to have a cadence of at least one video a week. Really, it's all about how to help you achieve, your potential, and how to help you make decisions about your next steps. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.